walking around downtown Seattle right now. It's election night, and it's been a weird election. We had a couple ballot boxes actually got torched. The ballots got burned, so they were unrecoverable. And oh, sorry. And so Governor Inslee called out the National Guard, or he activated part of the National Guard in order to provide security for this election, to protect the polling booths. And then there was, people were worried that after the election, especially if Trump lost, that there would be violence, because Trump keeps saying that there will be. Man, that guy, he just promotes violence a lot. And what he says in his speeches, it's kind of scary. So there are a lot of people right now, of course, who are questioning why half of the country seems to be okay with the neo-fascist sort of movement. And so, there are a lot of different theories on why that's happening. But it's definitely not good for democracy. It's not good for our stature in the world. And historians, I'm sure, will look at this period in the future and shake their heads wondering what happened. How did the train derail like this? But if Kamala Harris does not win this election and is not the first female president in the history of the United States, then it's going to be a very strange time to live here when you have these fascist elements in your government. And I guess we're just going to have to accept that half of the country, at least half of the voting public in this country, is okay with neo-fascism, with a right-wing extreme approach to things. They don't like people who are different than them. They're very transphobic. They think women should not be president. A lot of really troglodyte kind of attitudes. Actually, by the way, I'm walking by Jazz Alley right now, which is a really famous club in Seattle for jazz, if you're into that. But yeah, so it just makes you wonder, as a journalist and a commentator and musician, I'm wondering, what is the reaction going to be? One of the things that keeps going through my head is this. So, are we just going to start having more cultural icons who, unlike Taylor Swift or Bruce Springsteen, are we going to just start having more cultural icons who support fascism, who support Donald Trump? Is that what we're going to get now? Is that going to become a trend and more popular? Because right now, if you look at most of the people in our media, when it comes to actors and musicians, etc., they do not support Donald Trump. I mean, there's a lot of very outspoken artists and musicians on that issue. But if it becomes normalized and he wins this election, and it looks like there's a lot of support for him in this country, then man, kiss our reputation goodbye in the world, because that's crazy. If this is the kind of society that we want to become, I don't. And I know very few people in Seattle want that. So that's the other dichotomy here. So one, as I was saying, you have all these cultural icons who are actors, musicians, etc., who are not in support of Donald Trump, and they're pretty vocal about it. And it's pretty clear that in Hollywood, in the media, and in most of our cultural spaces, people are not in support of neo-fascism. So how does that connect with the fact that half of the country does support it? That is just weird and bizarre to me. There's some kind of disconnect, cognitive dissonance, right? And then the other disconnect is, in Washington State, we just elected another full slate of Democratic Party candidates for governor, uh, attorney general, all of the major offices have gone to Democrats. So what does that say when you have a city, especially in Seattle, this part of the state, so in support of the Democrats in this partisan system, and yet at least half the country does not share those values at all, doesn't seem to care much about democracy or human rights. I'm not sure, what do they care about? I guess that's one question. Money, power, conservative views, fundamentalist religious views, sort of a backwards look to our past as if it's somehow glorious, when actually the good old days were not so great at all, especially when you had Jim Crow and racism in the South, and the Ku Klux Klan running around, all sorts of crazy stuff. Joe McCarthy, accusing everybody of being a communist, kind of like Donald Trump does. So what do we do with these disconnects when there's such extreme polarization and nobody really knows how to resolve it? Do we just accept the fact that our country is divided and realize, well, there are these affinity groups, right? And some people are drawn and attracted towards affinity groups that share their values. So if they tend to be more liberal thinking, and they smoke cannabis and listen to rock and roll or something, and and it's transgender, then how does that fit with the rest of the country who just seems to despise all of that, or at least is prejudiced against it? So I don't know how you make this happen, how you do it so that people can live together in the same country without violence, without hatred. I don't know how. But, from a very rationalistic point of view, it seems like the indications are that, at least when it comes to our electoral system, the country is split. And there are some very extreme views on the right, and they support a guy who is a criminal, who wants to be a dictator. So really skewed value system, like really messed up and unhealthy, dysfunctional, dystopian. So how do you resolve that fact with the fact that so many of our cultural icons in music, not so much in business maybe, but in the arts, entertainment, are completely against what's going on politically in at least half of the country. So I'm going by the Jupiter now. It's a great place to see music and have a few drinks. I'm headed to a shop here in Belltown, and my friend's going to pick me up and give me a ride. So this is great. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield in Seattle. Well, it's great because it's not raining actually, and it's relatively good weather right now. So it's nice being out. We're down by the water, so I can smell the sea breeze. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield in Seattle, just expressing some of my off the top of my head thoughts on this election night, where we don't know who's going to be the next president. We don't know whether we're going to have a fascist-style, dictator-style, corrupt politician as our leader, with half of the country saying, yay, that's great, we love it. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield in Seattle for the MTC Report. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and have a good night.